Hello, welcome to Rise Form Studio, episode number 55. I'm your host, Michael McAuliffe. This week, Mike Schmidt from Angler's Choice Flies ties up his articulated streamer, the meal ticket. Materials list: thread UTC 140 denier tan, hook Gamakatsu S11 3H size 1, connection 19 strand beadle-on, the diameter is .018, beads, glass beads, 3 of them, size E, body number 1, barred rabbit strip, gold variant, body number 2, EP sparkle brush gold, body number 3, silly legs, barred pumpkin, head number 1, lead barbell eyes, large white, head number 2, ram's wool dark brown, head number 3, ram's wool tan.
Well, I am Mike Schmidt. I am the owner and production tyer for Angler's Choice Flies. I am based out of Columbus, Ohio now, and grew up in Michigan, so I've done a lot of streamer fishing, and streamer fishing is actually my preferred method of fishing. Today we're going to tie the meal ticket, which is an articulated streamer. The total length on this fly ends up being around 5 inches long. And it has one hook up and one hook down, so pretty much any direction the fish comes at it, it's going to get stuck. We'll go ahead and start our thread in the front of the hook and wind our way back to the rear tie-in point. The rear tie-in point on these hooks is approximately the point, if you hang your thread down, it's going to hang halfway between the hook point and the barb on the hook. At the rear tie-in point, we're going to tie in a rabbit strip. So what we'll do is we'll separate out the hair from the hide. So we're going to tie it in just by the hide. You're going to take about an inch of hide and hang it off the back of the hook. At that tie-in point, we'll give it 3 or 4 nice wraps, one on top of the other, to bind that hide directly to the hook shank in the same spot. Pull the hair out of the way and give it a few reps forward and a few reps back just to lock it into place. Once you have the hide out of the way, the next piece that we're going to tie in is EP sparkle brushes. What we'll do is just tie it in right at that same tie-in point. You can use your thread and kind of suck it right up underneath the rabbit strip a little bit, and then go ahead and wrap forward. Wrap it down tightly, and then you can just space wrap up. You want to leave yourself about 1 eye width back behind the eye on the hook shank, because that's where you're going to finish off this fly and tie the head for the back portion. What we're going to do with the sparkle brush is actually palmer it like you would a schlappen feather. So we'll go ahead and fold the fibers backwards and advance it forward to that point. Each time we come around the hook shank, you want to be careful to go ahead and fold those fibers back to trap down as few fibers as you can going forward. And you'll notice that I'm switching hands as I come forward as well, because every time you go around the hook shank, you're removing a quarter turn of twist from the material. So if you don't switch hands and you just hold on to the same spot as you come forward, you're going to unwrap the material going forward, and your flash is just all going to fall out. And once you have it in place, you can finesse the material out a little bit so you make sure that you can then evenly split the fibers down either side of the hook shank, and you pull your rabbit strip forward over the top so you can find the spot on the hide to split the hair away to tie down just the hide at the eye of the hook. So right behind the eye of the hook, we'll go ahead and bind the hide directly to the shank here, a few tight wraps, and then come in and clip it as closely as we can so we don't have too much bulk built up. We will have a slight head built up on this fly in the completed version, but we want to be able to control the shape and size of that head, so we want to leave as much of the bulk and material out as we can so we can build it up intentionally. The last piece for the back of the fly is to go ahead and add legs. What we'll do is try and find the approximate middle point and hold it in place. Give yourself a pinch wrap and use the thread tension to kind of pull the legs around to the one side. You give it a second wrap and then wrap around the legs, and now you have 2 legs down each side. As long as they don't extend past the back of the fly, you're fine. I will not clip those. I'll leave them in place. They won't foul up. So then we'll go ahead and just build up a small thread head over the top of the material here, and then finish it off with the whip finish. And that's the back half of the meal ticket. So now that we have the back half of the meal ticket completed, what we're going to do is attach it to the front hook. The attachment piece that we use for this particular fly, I always use 19 strand beadle-on. We'll put on the back hook on, and then we go ahead and add spacer beads. The purpose of the spacer beads is multiple fold. It does add a little bit of does add a little bit of flash, but the primary function of the spacer beads for this particular fly is really to hold the wire together so that it does not give it the opportunity to have either the hook or materials from the rest of the fly foul. We'll get our thread started on this particular one. It's really irrelevant where you start the thread. You want it towards the front and work to the back. You don't want to have side-by-side wraps. You want to have a bit of a gap between the wraps as you wrap backwards. Wrap to that rear tie-in point. All I'll do is pull it in. You want to have approximately 1 extra bead worth of space in there for the proper spacing for this. And because we're going to add lead barbell eyes to the front hook and it's going to invert that hook, you want to make sure that the back hook when you're tying it in is hook up. So we'll go ahead and we'll wrap that forward. We're going to tightly wrap side by side about 2/3 of the way up, and then we'll go ahead and cut the front. Now, part of the reason that you went ahead and did not wrap tightly side by side starting your thread is because that allowed a grooved entrance all the way to the back, and now you're wrapping over the top of it and it will sink the material down into those grooves and it holds it in place. So for the front of this fly, we're going to again use the EP Sparkle brush, and incidentally this particular color is the gold fleck. We'll go ahead and wrap that in the back, tie it down nice and tight right at that rear tie-in point, and tie yourself forward about 2/3 of the way, a little more than halfway. And we'll go ahead and figure eight in your barbell eyes. And again, we're going to go 3 or 4 wraps one direction, 3 or 4 wraps the other direction, and then wrap between the lead eyes and the hook shank. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're taking those wraps and you're sucking them in and tightening up those wraps so that that barbell eyes will not twist or fall out. So once we got to that point, we'll go ahead and take, and just like we did on the back, we're going to palmer the fibers forward, making sure that we don't trap down the fibers as we go. Fold them to the back each time around and switch hands, because again you're removing a 1/4 turn of twist. So each time you hold on to it all the way around, you're actually going to allow the fibers to fall completely out if you do not switch hands. We'll get right up behind the eyes and take one more turn over the top of the eyes to the front, and go ahead and tie it off in front of the lead eyes. And then we'll go ahead and cut off the excess here. So now we've got our fly front built. We need to add the rabbit strip to this. So we'll do like we did before, kind of fluff those fibers out so that we can make sure we can split them evenly down the center of the shank. We'll go ahead and take a barred rabbit strip and impale the rabbit strip right on the hook shank. So you know that you need at least 1 inch of strip up front. So we'll go ahead and have a little bit extra so we can pull it forward and tie it off tightly. But you impale the rabbit strip on the hook, and this is the tricky part. If this is the first time you're tying this fly, I would go ahead and just add a quick whip finish just in case. You remove the hook, impale the rest of the hide, and then place the hook back in the vise. Then you can go ahead and pull your rabbit strip forward right to the eye of the hook. Find your tie-in point so you just tie in by the hide, and wrap off the rabbit strip. And go ahead and tie off and then cut the excess. Now to get the length right so that the barring and the hair matches up on this, you pull the fly back and bring in your scissor point, and you want to cut the hide just behind the back of the head on the rear hook. And by doing that, just the hide itself, the hair extends back and the hair and the barring matches up perfectly with the back strip. You don't have any wider bits of hair. It flows without issue. So we'll go ahead on the front of this fly, we'll go ahead and add another set of rubber legs. So we will cut and tie in 2 legs down both sides, again tying in by the center point. So you find where the approximate center point is, hold it in place, and use your thread tension to pull it across the far side of the hook. Give it an extra wrap, pull the legs around and tie them down. And we'll maneuver the legs up over the top of the lead eyes, and then go ahead and wrap back to tie them in place. We'll go ahead and tie a topping and a belly on this fly of ram's wool. For this particular fly, and for any fly, for a natural bait fish, the top of the fish is almost always darker than the bottom of the fish. So we're going to go ahead and use darker brown for the top and a light cream for the belly. We'll start off with the cream for the belly. What you do is separate out a bit of the hair and cut it right down close to the hide so you can make it as long as possible. So we'll hold it in place, and you want the hair to extend about to the connection point on the rear hook. So really it's about 1/3 of the total length of the fly. You hold it in place and give it a few good wraps, and then trim off the excess. And then flip it back over and do the same on the top with your dark brown topping. Again, with the dark brown ram's wool, you want to go ahead and clip it as close down to the base of the hide as you can. At the top, it's a little trickier on this because you do have the hook point to deal with. What I like to do is take the hair and split it in the middle a bit so I can push it straight into the hook point, and that middle spreads around the hook point. The hair should be about the same length as it is on the bottom. So you'll hold it in place, give yourself a couple of wraps, trim your excess. And the fly is just about done. All we have to do is build up the head. The head on this fly is really his only purpose is to hide the tie down point for these materials. So we'll go ahead and wrap forward to the eye of the hook, and then wrap tightly side by side backwards, binding down the butt ends of that front material, and then wrap forward back to the eye, whip finish, and you're done. And that is the articulated meal ticket.
So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mike Schmidt for tying up a slab of articulated awesome. Go to www.anglerschoiceflies.com and buy flies from an independent American commercial tyer. We all need to support our fly fishing culture. This is a great way to do that. For information about the 2011 Regal Fly Tying School at Ramsey Outdoors, sponsored by Umpqua, Tiemco, and Metz, go over to our website and click on the Regal Fly Tying School link. I'm Mike McAuliffe for RiseFormStudio.tv. Go get some.